everybody. Just give everybody a second to filter in. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome and welcome back. If you've joined us during the week before, good to see you again. Awesome. All right. This is a reading panel, so we will be hearing excerpts from these lovely authors' new releases. This is authors' favorite panel, usually, because they get to choose their readings. So these authors are a very lucky bunch. And the minor theme for this panel is authors' favorites. So they get to pick their favorite scene that they will be sharing with you today. So we have Kris Bryant, Mary P. Burns, Carrie Hunter, Cathy Dunnell, and Anna Larner. Hi guys, welcome.
Hello.
All right, to give me a second to start the Facebook Live, I do have an opening question, and that is, what is your favorite type of scene to write? Is it an action scene? Is it the first kiss scene? What's your favorite type of scene? Carrie, let's start with you.
I'm kind of a hurt comfort fan, so I like those kind of fix me up scenes, I think. You know, when somebody's maybe at their lowest and the other person, usually in the partnership, is the one who's sort of like trying to fix them up. I think that's why I like medical stuff so much. So one of my people's usually a medic. But yeah, I like the taking care scene because I think it can lend itself into the kind of relationship building stuff. And I just find them really easy to write with the medical stuff and that kind of more so than the romance kind of aspect, to be fair, I think. So yeah, I like the hurt comfort. I find that easy, and I don't know, it just chills me out writing it, I think, because it just comes naturally. So I enjoy it.
Well, it gives you a good platform from which to then leverage your kind of more emotional scenes, right? You can start
Absolutely.
with yeah.
I think I would tag pretty much all my books as hurt comfort.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of trope, I would definitely go down that trope.
Yeah. Cathy, how about you? What's your favorite type of scene to write?
I think I really like those scenes where the first kind of spark appears between the two characters. So maybe it's not the first time they've met or interacted, but there's that definite like moment where there's a shift in the relationship to something more romantic. I always think they're really fun, and you've got so much variety as to what that shift could be. It could be something really major or something really minor, couldn't it, about the way someone makes a cup of tea or something, and that's this kind of moment where you see somebody in a new light.
I love that. That's so British. That moment, someone makes a cup of tea.
Very important.
I really hope that's in one of your books, because if it's not, it should be. Let's keep with our British theme here. Anna, how about you? What's your favorite type of scene to write?
I love it when, say, best mates are having a chat or there's banter, and it sort of sparks between them, and it's easy. And hopefully, in the scene that I read tonight, you can see that kind of easy chat and something that comes from familiarity or past. And sometimes they can have a little bit of feeling behind them as well. It needn't necessarily be comedy. It's that kind of sort of companionableness and intimacy. So it's not necessarily a romantic intimacy. I enjoy those sort of scenes to write. So banter, I enjoy very much.
Sure, and I agree. I think dialogue scenes are a lot of fun. Mary, how about you? What's your favorite type of scene to write?
I'm in Cathy's corner. I like those scenes where, you know, your characters have gotten to know each other. They've had that first scene together, and now it's maybe that second scene where they're beginning to get to know each other, and it's the flirtatious banter, or, you know, making that cup of tea.
Yep, taking that next step. And Kris, what's your favorite type of scene to write?
I really love the start of a book. I love the freshness of just the whole beginning, and then when the characters first meet. That's always real fun to write for me.
Cool.
And I like writing the intimate scenes as well.
Awesome. Great. All righty, let's get to our readings. We are going to start with Anna Larner. If everyone else could please stop their video and mute. Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Anna.
Hi, Sandy. Hi, everybody.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about the book that you're reading from, and you can start reading whenever you're ready.
That's great. So I'll be reading tonight and sharing my favourite scene from my new release, Highland Whirl. I think you can see it there. And just in short, Highland Whirl is an opposites attract, low angst contemporary romance, and it's a sequel to my debut 2017 novel Highland Fling. It picks up on the story of Highland Fling 4 years on, when Roxanne Barnes has been invited by her best mate Eve Edison up to the Highlands to celebrate her 30th birthday. Roxanne really isn't looking forward to going, and indeed seeing her best mate all hooked up with her new love, Moira Burns, and how that might make her feel. She's also not looking forward to seeing the feisty Alice Campbell, who Roxanne met in Highland Fling, and she couldn't be more surprised when she finds herself falling in love with her. So that's the premise of Highland Whirl. The scene I've chosen this evening, as I said a little bit earlier when we were talking about what scene I like to write, I've chosen it, it's full of banter, and it's also chosen because it's got a wonderful combination of humour and pathos. It's towards the end of the book, really, and we join Roxanne where she feels and is worried she's lost Alice, and that love, she might never have love. We join her in her favourite pub, the Brewer's Arms, as she's nursing her broken heart in the company of a group of her exes, which I've nicknamed the Roxettes. On the stage is a young girl called Ruby, who's about to entertain them with a cello version of Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody. And in many ways, the real pathos of the scene comes from the minor character, Belinda, who is also nursing a broken heart from unrequited love with Roxanne. And often as authors, our minor characters interest us just as much as our main characters. So I'm going to take you to the Brewer's Arms pub, and here it is, Highland Whirl. Hey, you guys, move over. The Roxettes nudged along to make space for Roxanne to pull up a stool next to Belinda. Belinda tucked her arm around Roxanne's. Evening, Miss Barnes. Hi. Roxanne turned to face the stage. The cellist was settling herself into her seat. Goodness, that cello is nearly as big as she is. It's amazing how far such a small girl can spread her thighs. But then, needs must. Belinda gave a seductive half bite of her bottom lip in Roxanne's direction. Seriously, do you not think of anything else? Belinda looked at her fellow Roxettes, and they all looked back at Roxanne open-mouthed. Roxanne stared back at them. What? I'm sorry, did you just accuse me of being sex-obsessed? Yeah, whatever. Roxanne focused on the stage. I hope she's good. This crowd can be cruel when they want. The girl began to play a passionate rendition of the Queen classic with concentrated vigour. It was good in an absolutely off-the-wall way. When it got to the distinctive chorus, the crowd sang along, so loudly, in fact, that the girl could barely be heard. Still, she carried on like a pro. The barman weaved his way around the room, gathering up people's empty glasses. He arrived at their table, flushed and slightly sweaty. Oh, Rox, he shouted, I nearly forgot. There was a woman in here earlier asking after you. An Alice, someone or other? She didn't leave a message or anything, and before you ask, I don't know where she went. Alice was here. All the blood in Roxanne's body rushed to her heart. She glanced urgently around them, even standing on a seat to try to see above the crowds. I can't see her. She hurriedly checked her phone for a missed message or phone call. Nothing. Maybe it wasn't her Alice. What did she look like? Did she have a Scottish accent by any chance? The barman nodded and adopted a dodgy Scottish lilt to his voice. Tall, blonde, a wee Bobby Dazzler. Roxanne reached again for her phone. I'll give her a call. Belinda held her arm. She's gone, Rox. I even invited her to sit with us. She's obviously changed her mind. You spoke to her. You let me sit here and you said nothing. I'm sorry, it's hardly my fault she's done a runner. And good for her, she's clearly out of your league. Will you just fuck off, Belle? Don't you think I know that? Belinda's face turned bright red. Fine, sod you. Look, wait, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have snapped at you. Forgive me? I don't know, I mean, you could maybe settle the tab. And then I'll be forgiven. Let's not be too hasty. Without needing to be asked, the barman, who'd been lingering at their table next to them, swiftly printed off a receipt and handed it to Roxanne. What the chuff? How many Bloody Marys? Not enough. Oh, I think Ruby's reaching her climax. Where are you going? Roxanne hung her head. I honestly don't know. Linda gave a sigh. For pity's sake, if you have to, then just ring her, or you could always try the train station, or maybe she's staying overnight somewhere. Yeah, maybe. Roxanne pulled on her jacket to leave. She fumbled in the pocket of her jeans, pulled out some cash, and left it on the receipt. And I really am sorry for everything. Belinda swallowed and blinked. She gave an indignant jut of her chin. What did they say? Je ne regrette rien. She then turned away and wolf whistled at Ruby. Her voice broke a little as she shouted, "Go, girl!" Roxanne slipped away and out onto the pavement. How many people just like Belinda had she hurt over the years? Just as Eve feared she would do with Alice. No one's heart was safe in her hands. No one's. Thank you.
Love it. Thank you so much, Anna.
Thanks, Sandy.
There we go. Hi, Cathy.
Hi.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your new book and start reading whenever you're ready.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm going to be reading from my new release, Beulah Lodge. So this is a novel that's set in Yorkshire, England, at the end of the 19th century. So Ruth is engaged to be married and is expecting to serve as a missionary in India with her soon-to-be husband, Daniel. She's staying at her aunt's house on the Yorkshire moors, where she develops a relationship with a maidservant, Eliza, who has come from a tough background on the streets of London. And in this scene, Eliza and Ruth have already shared a kiss, and it has created a little bit of perhaps awkwardness between them. I wonder that you can be so calm, I said. About what? Eliza asked without looking up. Oh, Eliza, I burst out in frustration. You are perfectly aware of what I mean. She looked up at me then, and her face told me that she did indeed know. She paused while she finished rolling her cigarette, and then she patted the bench beside her. Here, she said, come and take the weight off. Looks like you've been out for a good old tramp. I looked at my boots, which were coated with mud, and then I looked at the spot beside Eliza. My better judgment told me to simply leave, that spending any time alone in Eliza's company was dangerous. But I did not heed my better judgment and sat down next to her. She perched the cigarette between her lips and took a box of matches from her pocket. She struck one and lit the cigarette, inhaling deeply. Then she held it out to me. Like some? She asked. I find it helps when you're trying to have a think about something. I looked at the cigarette for a long moment. Almost everyone I could think of in my life would be horrified at the idea of a lady smoking. My father, Beatrice, and most certainly Daniel. I took it from Eliza's fingers. You breathe it into your mouth, then into your chest, Eliza said. I did as she said and coughed violently as the acrid smoke hit my lungs. My eyes were watering as I passed it back to a laughing Eliza. That is truly foul, I said when I had regained my breath. Yes, Eliza admitted, looking at the glowing tip before taking a deep drag. She blew the smoke out in front of her in a long sigh. But it gets to be very soothing. It was one of the few pleasures me and the other girls had. She tapped the ash from the cigarette into the grate of the range and settled back into the bench. I looked at her profile, at the smooth lines of her cheek and jaw. I thought about what her life must have been like in London, and my own fretting over what had occurred between us seemed petty and unimportant. Eliza, I began slowly, I cannot be as calm as you about what happened. Are you talking about when I kissed you? Eliza blew smoke out languidly. Yes, I said, my face growing hot. I should not have allowed it to happen. It was very wrong, and I hope you can understand. Eliza looked at me thoughtfully for a moment and then said, all right, I know it was a bit, what's the word, impulsive. I didn't mean to upset you. I only did it because, well, why do people usually kiss each other? I could not even begin to contemplate the answer to this question, so I said hurriedly, just so long as you understand that it was a mistake and must never happen again. Don't matter either way. Soon enough, you'll be in India and I'll be stuck here. We were silent for a moment as the pot simmered on the range. The kitchen was darkening as the afternoon drew in, the low light from the range casting an orange glow across the floor. Yes, I said, that is very true. It had been a while since I thought about where my future lay. I was aware of Eliza's eyes on me as she asked, are you looking forward to your new life? She said it gently, and when I looked up at her, her eyes were full of kindness. I felt a sudden lump in my throat as I realised that I had missed kindness since Papa had died. I don't want to go, I said, the words coming out in a sudden rush. To India, I don't want to go. Why not? I struggled to put the feeling into words. I can't explain it. It's as if my inner self. Is it about being a missionary? Do you think God don't want you to go? I do not know what God wants from me. Before, when I prayed, I used to feel his presence surround me like I was standing beneath a vast willow tree. But since my engagement, I cannot find him. I had voiced something that I had not even fully expressed to myself and felt as if a weight had been removed from my chest. Your fiancé? Eliza asked. He's a good man. She didn't reply immediately, but took another drag of her almost extinguished cigarette. I've met a lot of good men. Most of the blokes who came to see us girls on the streets was good men, fine, upstanding gentlemen. That's what the world thought of them. But how a man is in public and how he is in private, she shook her head. They was never good to us. She stubbed out her cigarette on the side of the range. Yes, I whispered. I fear that Daniel does not respect me. He wishes me always to be something I am not. And that's why you don't want to go to India. I nodded miserably, fighting the tears that were pricking at my eyes. Tell him you don't want to go. I shook my head. I've given him my promise to be his wife and to go wherever he goes. I cannot go back on that. Eliza took my hand in her own. Her grip was firm. Well, you ain't there yet. You're still here, aren't you? Yes, I said, I'm still here. I looked at her face, knowing that at some point in the future, I would be in India with Daniel. I would be remembering her face and how it looked at this moment. My eyes dropped to her lips, which parted slightly. One day, I thought, I will be far away from here and I will be unhappy. The certainty of my future misery made the present seem of no account. I leaned forward and pressed my lips tentatively against Eliza's. Thank you.
Thank you. I love that. And we've been in the chat roll about all the amazing accents. So appreciate that too. Thank you. All righty, we are going to stick with the amazing British accents and hear from Carrie Hunter. There she is.
You said amazing accent. You heard me speak before.
Come on, you can do it. I think it's amazing. I don't know about you guys, but
Okay.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about your new book and start reading.
That's the book. It's Unbreakable. It always looks weird when it's in reverse. Yeah, I'm going to read from Unbreakable. It was released in October. It's a thriller. The main plot revolves around an injured woman, Ellen, who kidnaps a doctor to fix her up rather than go to a hospital. And by the time this scene rolls around, it's kind of maybe a third, maybe a quarter of the way into the book. Grace, the doctor, has worked out what the hell is going on with Ellen, why she didn't want to go to the hospital, and is actually helping her. I'm not going to say much more than that because it is quite spoilery. During this scene, the women are taking refuge in a house that Grace owns but no longer lives in. Okay. By the time Grace had loaded her tray and returned to the living room, Ellen was awake. She managed to sit up without Grace's assistance and then let Grace place the tray on her lap. Voila! Grace settled on the adjacent armchair. It shouldn't be too hot. Thanks. Ellen stirred the soup in slow circles, and Grace concentrated on her own bowl, inwardly wincing as Ellen missed her mouth with the spoon. Ellen swapped hands, trying again with her left, but she clearly wasn't ambidextrous, and her second attempt was even worse, spilling the entire spoonful. Why can't I do this? She looked at Grace, frustration and confusion rolling off her. Because you lost a hell of a lot of blood last night. Grace slid the spoon from Ellen's fingers and set it aside. And you may have nerve damage on that right side. You definitely have muscle damage. Here. Abandoning her lunch, she sat on the edge of the sofa and lifted the bowl to Ellen's lips. There was only the slightest delay before Ellen relented and swallowed a couple of mouthfuls. She shook her head to let Grace know she was finished, and she was still shaking it as Grace lowered the bowl. I run an international company. She sounded more bemused than anything. I raised Amelia on my own, spent 12 years in the armed forces, and I can't even hold a spoon. I should have got some cheese to melt into it, Grace said. That's the best thing ever when you're not well. I prefer it without, Ellen said. Mouse is the cheese freak in our house. Amelia? Grace vaguely recalled her using the name for Amelia earlier that morning. Is that where she gets the nickname then? No. Ellen pushed at the bowl, and Grace took the hint, moving it right away from her. That's not where it comes from. Oh. Grace faltered, curious but reluctant to pry. You don't have to talk about her, Ellen. Not unless you want to. I adopted her. Ellen said it quickly, as if any pause would collapse the conversation. I've been thinking about it for a long time before I applied. I'd always wanted a child, but never wanted to be pregnant. Does that sound weird? Not especially. Charlotte was similar. She loved kids and she wanted to be a mum, but we'd already decided I'd be the one to carry them. I had no one to make that decision with. Ellen stated it as a matter of fact rather than something she was upset about. I'd had relationships here and there, but nothing I'd have wanted to bring a child into. I was newly single on the eve of my 35th birthday, and it seemed like a sign. A vehicle began to reverse slowly down the street. They both turned to peer through the slatted window blinds, but it was a white van with a black woman at the wheel, and she drove right past the house. Grace got up to close the blinds fully, which left them in semi-darkness, even when she turned on a small side lamp. Ellen leaned forward, her face slipping further into shadow. The facade of anonymity seemed to help her pick up the thread. Amelia was 16 weeks old when I brought her home, and for the first month, I wondered what the hell I'd done. I'd fought so hard for her during the adoption process, and I'd been so sure I wanted her, and so confident I could cope, but it went to shit almost at once. Why? Grace said, genuinely intrigued. I knew she'd been neglected by her birth parents, but I didn't realise how badly until that first night I was alone with her. Ellen touched the burner phone Grace had left on the arm of the sofa. It was a habit she'd developed whenever she was most distressed, though she didn't seem aware of it. Social services had told me she was an absolute angel, she continued, quiet, slept through the night. It sounded too good to be true, and it was. She didn't cry for weeks, Grace. No one had ever come to her when she cried till she'd just given up. She was like a shell of a kid. It was as if she'd learned to be invisible, unless she heard a loud noise or a raised voice, and then she'd freeze, her eyes as wide as dinner plates, every bit of a tent, waiting for the punch. Poor little mite, Grace said. What on earth did you do? Honestly, I spent the first couple of weeks wondering whether I could take her back. Ellen shook her head, as if she was something I bought that didn't fit right, but it was okay because I still had the receipt, and it would have been so simple to do that. I had all my excuses lined up and ready to go. It wasn't what I imagined it would be, and I wouldn't be able to change anything for the better. And she needed someone who was good at this, and that definitely wasn't me. But you didn't do that, Grace said. From the way Ellen was speaking, she doubted Ellen had ever admitted this to another soul. No, I didn't. I was in such a fucking state, it took me a while to realise I'd adopted a kindred spirit, and she had a form of PTSD. It was easier after that. I got better at avoiding the things that might spark her off, and figuring out what she liked and what seemed to help her. There wasn't any major breakthrough, you know. One of those big moments you see on the telly with the sun coming out of the clouds and the choir singing in the background. It was just a series of little things. She'd tug my hair, or her face would change when she saw me. Not quite a smile, but getting there. Or she wouldn't stiffen so badly when I held her. Ellen stopped. She had run out of air and she was breathing hard. When she continued, her voice had dropped to a whisper. The first time she cried, I felt like I'd won the lottery and we never looked back. I told her once when she was being naughty, you used to be as quiet as a mouse. And she howled laughing at that, and the name stuck. Ellen tilted her head. It's so quiet now without her. I can't bear it being this quiet. I feel like there's a piece of me missing. Grace couldn't say anything in response. That feeling had been a constant for her over the past 2 years. She put her arm around Ellen, felt Ellen nestle against her shoulder, and sat with her in the silence. Thank you.
Thanks, Cari. And I do have to state for the record that everything is better with cheese. I know that was not your main point for the reading, but there you go.
I am a big fan of cheese and tomato soup.
Perfect. Thank you. Next up, I hope we can bring back Nanisi. I'm going to ask you our opening question first.
Okay.
And that is, what is your favorite type of scene to write?
Oh, that's hard. Something funny, which not all my books have that, but that's what I like to write, is something funny.
Oh, I like that. I think if we can't entertain ourselves, then we can't possibly entertain readers, right?
That's it. That's right.
Perfect. All right. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your new release, and then you can start reading whenever you're ready.
Okay, that's Jordan's Kiss. Somewhere around here, there. Anyways, it's about Jordan, who is a musician. She's doing fine in California and teaching in a high school. And she's very active in the leather community. And there's an accident and she's charged with all sorts of criminal activity because of what happened in the playhouse. And so she ends up losing her job and she has to get out of California. And so she starts across country and visiting friends along the way, and ends up in Boston, where her friend Robbie, who was a roommate in college, is playing with a lounge band at a restaurant in Boston. And she sings one song with them and everybody loves her because she has a dynamite voice. And with the piano player, Morgan, is a little standoffish. And Jordan doesn't understand why, because she feels a very deep attraction to Morgan. And so this is where this part starts. Sunday's rehearsal was ending. They'd worked on 3 new songs to add this week. Before she turned to leave, Jordan said, "Morgan." "No," was the response. But Jordan had enough. She wasn't going to sit back and watch this happen, and she knew she should try to do something about it. "Don't tell me no. You don't even know what I was going to say." "I'm not your submissive." "I know you're not, because I would never allow a submissive to behave like you do. You're driving me crazy." Morgan stood there looking at her. "I don't know who's responsible for this, but I will not take the fallout. Talk to me, damn you. Don't treat me like some shit off the street." "I won't do this," Morgan stated, and went upstairs. This time, Jordan followed her. She went into this small room, a small bedroom that had an electronic keyboard, a desk, and a lot of recording equipment set up. Morgan was sitting at it. "Come on, Morgan. We can't keep on this way. The music won't take it. I need to connect with you. Otherwise, it's like we're doing karaoke. There's no connection between our instruments. The music will only get better if we communicate. I mean, even a soloist with a full 100-piece orchestra communicates with a conductor." Morgan stopped. Hadn't she said that several years ago? She looked at Jordan. Their eyes met, but neither spoke. Finally, Morgan gave in. "I'm sorry. You're right." "Where do you go? I haven't felt you around here all week." "I don't know." "Don't give me that. You do know. Do I have to be a super dom and demand you tell me?" "I don't do dom sub." "You don't have to. Just tell me where your mind goes when you run out of here." She paused for a moment, but Morgan didn't respond. "And you don't have to do any power exchange. I told you before, I'm flexible. I can do this any way you want. I will not take being ignored. We have to communicate. If we talk to each other, it doesn't have to be one or the other of us in charge or on top." She grinned at Morgan. Hopefully she'd smile too. She did. Then she took a deep breath, clamped her lips tight. Morgan waited to see what was going to come out. "I don't do BDSM because I was in that sort of a relationship when I was younger. I was still in college. She was older and very well known. It wasn't physical BDSM, It was emotional BDSM. I fell in love with her and thought she did me, but she reminded me constantly of the things I had done wrong, of how my former lovers had left me because I ignored them. Everyone and how I always fucked things up. I merely had to walk into the room and she'd find some way wrong with the way I was walking, the way I was carrying something. I would be working on an arrangement and she complained that I never helped around cleaning the apartment, never helped cooking or dishes, and I never listened to her, and that all I ever did was sit there and scribble on music paper. It didn't matter I was doing something that would make us money. I wasn't paying attention to her. I was ignoring everything. Whenever we argued, it always became my fault, and she twisted the logic to make it look that way. I could barely function on my own. After a while, I couldn't even do anything, right or wrong. For quite a while, I was in a place so dark that it took me quite a while to find my way out of it. People wondered why I came back from New York City. I came back because if I had stayed there, I would have eventually committed suicide. I swore I'd never get into another relationship like that again. So the minute it feels abusive, I'm gone. Now that made sense, but there was something there that she said that didn't. Why did you agree to it? Oh no, Morgan shrugged it off. I did not agree to it. Then it wasn't BDSM. BDSM or leather is safe, sane, and consensual. Both parties have to agree. It sounds like you were simply abused. There was nothing simple about it. So when you say gone, you don't necessarily mean physically. No. That made sense to Jordan. She'd seen Morgan withdraw within herself. Now she knew why. I wondered why you didn't date. Robbie said she didn't know, but I couldn't imagine why, because you're so desirable. Morgan broke out laughing. Jordan, if I ever get into a relationship again, I want an equal relationship. It mustn't be one-sided. I shouldn't be worshipped. I don't want to have to lead. I don't want to follow, at least not all the time. I know there are places where I have to be in charge, and there are places I'd like to let the other person take control. All in all, I want someone equal to me. Oh, there'll never be anyone equal to you. You're always ahead of everyone. She knew Morgan's mind worked twice as fast as everyone else's. Morgan laughed. Now you're talking crap. I'm not always ahead. When we're on stage, you far outshine me. Only because you programmed it that way. Please, Morgan, I know that I should never abuse your emotions. Morgan looked down at her lap. Sure you will. Maybe not intentionally, but sometime you'll say something without thinking or in the heat of an argument. I'll always be careful, Jordan said, looking into her eyes. I promise I'll never humiliate you, wound your ego, embarrass or debase you in any way. I think you're one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. I admire your music ability. Aren't you attracted to me at all? She asked. Morgan grinned. Of course I am. I've been hot for you since the first night you sang with us. You had me right from the opening notes. When you made the first octave jump on Somewhere Over the Rainbow, I almost couldn't finish that song. I was so undone. That was all Jordan needed to hear. She knew in her heart that Morgan had liked that, but now it had been confirmed. She leaned over the keyboard and placed her lips on Morgan's. She grabbed hold of her head and didn't let go for quite a while.
Wow, throwing us in the deep end there, Nanisi. I love it. What an emotional scene. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next up, we have Mary P. Burns.
Thank you.
Hi, Mary.
Hi.
Can you tell us a little bit about your new book and start reading?
Sure. This is the cover, which I hope everyone can see okay. Suspecting Her. And let's see. Okay. It's about Erin O'Connor, a very broke artist. She blew up her promising art career 5 years ago at her first major show when she sprayed a tube of paint on the woman her then girlfriend was having an affair with. And now her best friend, Nat Robichaux, an African-American journalist blogger, afraid Erin is at the end of her financial rope, hires her to help her with a story about racist practices in the New York City real estate market. Erin, of course, ends up falling for Catherine Williams, one of the realtors possibly involved in the scheme, and they begin a relationship. But one night, Catherine comes back to the office late, overhears what she thinks is a lover spat between Erin and her own assistant, and confronts them, only to see that they're rifling her office files for info for Nat's story. Catherine has a meltdown, having trusted Erin after her own long-term relationship dissolved, and she flees the city. Of course, Erin tries desperately to win her back, but it's finally Nat who steps in and sets up a not-so-accidental meeting between them. And that's what this scene is. Erin pushed her cart through Fairway's aisles, taking in all the mounds of fruit, the barrels of olive oils, and the endless cases of cheeses from everywhere in the world. She loved this store and never got used to the sight of such bounty. The largesse was at once an assault on the senses and a thing of beauty, soft-core grocery porn. Her particular favorite was the wall of olive oils. It mimicked a huge wine cellar, bottles nestled on their sides in each cubbyhole, tasting cups sitting on the shelves next to various bottles the staff had selected. Next to them sat little baskets of bread torn into bite-sized pieces, perfect for dunking into the oil. Usually, Erin had to taste a few of them. It would be rude not to. But tonight, she wasn't interested. At 11 o'clock on a Sunday night, she had the place to herself. Normally, she'd have wandered around looking at things, having no idea what to do with half of them, but not tonight. She had the marketing list in her hand from Nat and Kendra. She was tired, and she wanted to get the shopping done and get home. She picked up a jar of Moroccan preserved lemons, read the ingredients, and put it back. No idea. Kendra had come up with a new vegetable gratin recipe for Erin to make for them next week, so she made her way to the produce section. There were so many vegetables in this dish, she figured she'd be here a while, but marketing always took her mind off everything, so it wouldn't be a hardship by any means. Maybe she'd just forget about the hell of the last 2 weeks while she chose the perfect big round white mushrooms and winnowed out the 2 small green beans. She had a small eggplant in her hand when she looked up to see Catherine staring at her from across the pyramid of beefsteak tomatoes. When the blood singing in her ears finally waned, she put the eggplant in her cart and braced herself for another hurricane. "Hi," Catherine said. "No hurricane, not even any gale force winds." "Hi. That's a lot of vegetables." "I'm cooking for Nat and Kendra again." Erin noticed the basket over Catherine's arm contained a bottle of red wine, a small box of crackers, and one lonely piece of what looked like smoked Gouda cheese in its brown wax lining. "I hope that's not tomorrow night's dinner." Catherine looked at the basket. "I'm not really eating a lot lately." They looked at each other over the tomatoes. Those blue eyes seemed to hold a question Erin didn't want to guess at, but she knew she had to answer it with something before Catherine decided to leave. She had never desired someone so much in her life. "Why don't we get some baby Swiss, some bacon, and..." She picked up a soft ball-sized tomato. "And I'll make you a grilled cheese bacon and tomato sandwich." "You would?" "I'd like to." Catherine looked down at the floor. "We will never figure this out if we don't talk," Erin said quietly. "We did a lot of talking, as I recall." Erin's stomach turned. Catherine finally looked up at her. "Even with everything that Nat told me, I still feel like you took me apart." So that was it. Deep melancholy following the hurricane she'd been at the office. Erin understood melancholy. "You took me apart too." "I did?" Erin rolled her cart a little closer to Catherine, hopeful. "I didn't expect to find a woman who understood me, who was willing to take a chance on me, and who gave me all of herself when I held out my hand. I think it was more that white teddy that you were wearing when you seduced me. You were irresistible in it." Erin inched her cart forward again. "You made sure I wasn't wearing it very long." Catherine's eyes flicked away. Erin took another step. "Everything about you is irresistible to me. I didn't expect to fall in love with you, but I did. I can't undo that. Then why did you betray me? I had a responsibility to Nat and to the series she's doing. But you have to know, what I did to you, it killed me. Neither of them moved. Look, the first article comes out at midnight tonight. You should read it. Catherine made no move, so Aaron turned her cart to go. A hurricane would have been so much more humane than this knife Catherine seemed to be slowly slipping between her ribs. What if I had been one of them? Aaron turned to look at her. But you weren't. And I knew it, really. But I had to bring proof to Nat, one way or another. It still hurts that you couldn't trust me. I thought we knew each other. Catherine, I couldn't have trusted my own mother in this case. And Nat was right. About what? Your loyalty. I would do anything for her. Yes, she said that. Catherine switched her basket to her other arm. She also said that eventually that would change, that one day you would choose me over her. Aaron's stomach dropped, several flights. Why would Nat say such a thing? I don't have any bread in the apartment, Catherine said. You can't make grilled cheese without it. She took a few tentative steps around the pyramid. Aaron nodded. We should go to the bakery. They headed up the aisle together, glancing at each other. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Mary. I love how that, okay, we're gonna, there you go. I love how that scene mirrored some of what you were saying in your favorite scene to write, how it's not the meeting, it's what happens after, and the acknowledgement of what's between them. So awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Last but certainly not least, there we go. Didn't even have to introduce her. There she is.
Hello.
Miss Bryant. Why don't you tell us about Always? And this book will be forever and always in my mind. And so will your next one be forever and always.
Right. I know. I get them mixed up too. So, yes. So I know we're pressed for time. My book is about a private investigator, Perry, who just actually opened her office, her firm, and her first customer client is her recently deceased great grandmother, whom she calls Emma. And so her assignment is to find the woman in the locket. She receives a locket that, opens up. It's a heart locket. And on one side is her great grandmother, and the other side is somebody who she's supposed to find. So one of my favorite things to write is when characters first meet. So I'm going to read the section where the two love interests meet for the first time. Chapter 3, Passport Stamped. This is from Perry's point of view. My heart fluttered, and I stopped and stared at the sketch of a woman displayed in a booth at the street fair. I was outside Naples, Italy, in Sequina, a small town Emma had spent some time in. I parked my Fiat rental and started walking, only because the street was blocked. After 3 days of squeezing the steering wheel and barely surviving traffic in a foreign country, I was starting to get used to the speed of cars here and their drivers' lack of turn signal usage. I even looked to see if maybe the cars in Italy weren't equipped with them, but they were. I leaned closer to the sketch, amazed at my luck after several days of hearing and learning all the different ways to say no in Italian. I'd started with the towns Emma had been stationed in for the longest periods of time. My list of residents and archives to check out had dwindled to this little town that I wasn't even sure she lived in. After all that, here was a sketch of a woman who looked exactly like the photo in the locket. I turned in the empty booth and looked out at the crowd, willing somebody to see me and help me. Somebody who should be in this booth. I needed answers. After days of showing an enlarged photo of the mysterious woman to people in half a dozen towns in Italy, I finally caught a break. Do you know where this artist is? I asked the man selling puppets in the next booth. He shrugged and muttered something in Italian. It sounded like he wasn't fond of his neighbor. The man in the booth on the other side, selling books and stuffed toys, was too busy to bother. I looked around one last time for help before I gently pulled the sketch down to look at the detail. The artist had done an amazing job. She captured the same happiness in the woman's eyes and the small dimple in her left cheek. Her hairstyle must have been a popular one because Emma had it too, though the length was shorter. From behind me came an angry question in Italian. I turned to see a tall, beautiful woman with her arms crossed. My peripheral vision picked up long, tan legs, red toenails that peeked out from strappy sandals, toned arms, and beautiful wavy hair that she had pulled over one shoulder, but my eyes never left hers. They quickly flashed with annoyance. As if in a trance, I couldn't stop staring at her light brown eyes. They quickly flashed with annoyance, and I figured at this point that I was staring. There was a clip to her words that I knew was more than just language. I couldn't find my own words. To hear somebody being tongue-tied around a woman was different than experiencing it. I opened my mouth and closed it again quickly. Where were my words? Something must have clicked because she took a small step back and forced a smile. Can I help you? Was she the artist? I tore my gaze from her penetrating stare just to catch my breath. She was attractive and extremely intense. Her light, fashionable yet casual clothes made me feel like a frumpy American. At least I had tried harder today after learning that people were more likely to help me when I took the time to fix my hair and apply makeup. My wardrobe was very limited, and I didn't want to spend any of Emma's money on new clothes. The woman's perfectly arched eyebrow indicated she wasn't happy. Why was everyone here so angry at me? Just so you know, that's not for sale. Her English was perfect, but she had a slight accent. She gently pried the sketch from my hands and hung it up again. I need to find this woman. Please, do you know her? I heard the desperation in my voice that had been building since the moment I opened the locket. Why? I took a step back and took a deep breath to calm down. I probably sounded bonkers to the artist, but I needed her to know that this woman was the sole reason I was in Italy in a way that wouldn't have overwhelmed her. Another deep breath. I have a client in the United States who asked me to locate her, I said. The woman folded her arms again and leaned her weight on one hip. Her movement drew attention to her legs, and I took a quick moment to appreciate the skirt that hugged her curves and was short enough to show off the smoothness of her skin. So, how do you know she's the woman you're looking for? I handed her an enlarged photo replica from the locket. She harumphed and thrust the photo back. That could be any Italian woman, and it doesn't answer the question. What does your client want with this lady? I stepped closer, anxious to prove my point. First of all, it's definitely the same woman. Look at the shape of the eyes and the depth of her dimple. It's the exact same as your sketch. I only want to meet the woman and give her a memento for my client. Personally give it to her. If you know where she is, who she is, can you please tell me where I can find her? Where are you from? I'm from Connecticut on the East Coast. I wanted to see recognition, but she only afforded a bored look. Can you tell me who she is? The woman looked me up and down, pursed her lips contemplatively, and nodded. I can do better than that. I can take you to her. Without thinking, I grabbed her hands and squeezed. Thank you so much. I dropped her hands at the second eyebrow arch. I'm here until 6. If you come back then, I will take you to her. My jaw dropped open and I laughed at my good fortune. Definitely, 6 o'clock. I'll be back then. I'm Perry Logan. What's your name? She stalled for a few minutes. Camilla Rossini. Thank you, I said. One nod. I will see you later. Her arms were still crossed and she ignored my attempt at a handshake. There really wasn't a thing in Italy. I was going to have to learn that not all cultures were the same. Where's the woman who was in this booth? It was 5 minutes until 6. The 10-foot by 10-foot space was empty. No walls or anything indicated that somebody was even there, but I knew it was the same spot. What time did Camilla break down? I asked her puppet-wielding neighbor. He shrugged and shook his head as though he didn't understand me and continued carefully storing his puppets in containers. I tried again. Camilla? I pointed to the now empty booth. Is she here? He hissed a reply as if asking him a few questions was such an inconvenience. No, gone. He held up both hands and spread out his fingers, indicating the number 10. Even though his English was choppy, I understood she left 10 minutes ago. Shit, damn it, she tricked me. Or maybe she just forgot. I cleared my throat to loosen the bubble of panic stuck in my throat. I quickly used my translator app and asked the question in Italian, even though I knew the answer. Do you know where she lives? No. That's it.
Oh, but is she gonna find her?
I'm guessing with about, 250 pages left, probably.
Probably, maybe.
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. All right, if everyone can jump back on for a quick second. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions. That makes me sad. And thank you all so much for being here. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.